Hi everyone, I'm Jasmin. I am a member of Nucleate Boston and a PhD candidate at Harvard Immunology. I'm thrilled to be moderating this panel featuring some fantastic Activator alumni called From Lab to Launch. We're gonna have a discussion for about 30 minutes, and then we'll have about 10 minutes for some questions from the audience. So feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we can have some answered live as we're reaching the end of our chat. But yeah, let's get right to it and go through some introductions of the people that we have joining us today on this panel. Can we start with Erin? We want to keep them brief. Name, company, and how Nucleate maybe played a role in your founding.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Aaron Edwards. I'm the CEO and co-founder at KiraGen Bio, and we use AI-guided gene editing combinations to give CAR T and other cell therapies the equivalent of noise-canceling headphones that enable them to ignore suppression from tumor microenvironments that will hopefully lead to not only more effective but more durable treatment outcomes for patients with really intractable heme and solid tumors. Uh, KiraGen actually formed during my time in my MBA program here at Harvard Business School, and we used the Nucleate Activator program to really do a lot of forcing functions for the company that we were already planning. So it was really great timing, and I was really fortunate to participate in the program.
Sweet, thank you. Gleb?
Hey everyone, thanks for having me here. My name is Gleb Kuznetsov, co-founder and CEO of Manifold Bio. We create tissue-targeted medicines using a platform that combines AI-guided protein design with the ability to do mega-scale in vivo screening of those proteins. So the company was in Nucleate in the first, or it was before it was called Nucleate. The whole program was called Activate. This was the spring of 2019. I think we were one of 4 or 5 companies. So a nice journey since then. We've since raised a Series A. Companies approaching 40 people, and yeah, just excited to be here and share some of that experience.
Also, thank you. And Tere?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tere. I'm very happy to be here and talk about how Nucleate has helped DUB Therapeutics. DUB Therapeutics is developing self-delivering siRNA to address the global unmet need of fibrotic diseases. Our lead therapeutic area is ophthalmology, and we hope to dose our first patient in 1 year's time. So for us, Nucleate was phenomenal because we were able to capitalize on the availability of contributors. And Dr. Church mentioned how Zoom has really just changed how people work. And I agree with that 100%. We leveraged 4 contributors, and I thought I was being savvy and clever at the time to help with our development. And the reality of the situation is that we were across 3 continents, so about 4 different time zones, and Zoom made it possible for them to actually, the contributors, that is, to really help us with our diligence, with the competitive landscape, regulatory strategy, etc. So cannot thank Nucleate enough and happy to talk about my experience.
Awesome. Thank you all for the intros and for giving us a little bit more about how Nucleate played a role. We really want this panel to, one, highlight you all as alumni, but also show people how they can get involved in maybe what part of that journey looks like, going from academic research to actually starting a biotech and some of the things that come along the way as you're growing and developing. So I guess we can just get started with the start of this journey. The first question that I have is, looking back, what was the spark that either motivated you to start a company initially, or, and I guess this could also be an and question, what motivated you to apply to the Activator program? And anyone can start with the answer, and we don't have to go in any particular order.
So I guess I'll start. So for us, it was really fortuitous the way that I was able to meet with the co-founder, and this is where networking really becomes really important. A friend of mine visited Central New York, where DUB Therapeutics is now headquartered, met the co-founder CSO, Dr. Audrey Bernstein, and realized that I had a skill set that she needed to advance the therapeutic. So she had a patent at the time, did not have an incorporated company, but he knew that she needed an immunologist and someone who was more interested in the business of science and translational medicine. And so he encouraged us to meet, and we did. And 1 year later, we were incorporated.
Love that. What sparked the interest in the activator then?
So for us, Activator, it really came down to we had a need, right? And there was two things, actually, if I'm being completely honest. Boston is the biotech capital of the world. Everyone is aware of this, right? So we were looking for a way in, but remotely. So again, it comes down to us participating in the global virtual activator where our presence wasn't required in Boston in and of itself, but we had access to all that, Nucleate HQ was bringing to the table, which includes the sponsors, the investors, the, mentors, the regulatory specialists, and of course the contributors. So for us, it was really a no-brainer.
Cool. You knew what you were getting into and really sought it out. I like that.
You can't do it alone. And when you have no money, you really are looking for people who are able and willing to assist, knowing that on the outside, it really isn't going to be a monetary transaction, but something that's going to be a different type of value.
Anyone else have a story?
I'm going to pick on Aaron because I heard his story recently, and so I really want him to tell it.
Yeah, sure, sure. I think our story is a bit different because we didn't spin out of an academic lab. And so my co-founder, Ryan Murray, and I had actually worked together quite some time before we both went back to school. So he went to get his PhD, I was in my MBA program, and KiraGen actually formed from a pitch deck exercise. So I had to make a pitch deck for class. We had some ideas about how we would have applied some technologies that we had worked on in the past had we been in the decision maker seat, and made a pitch deck for class, kept working on it, and then actually was encouraged to then pitch a VC. And we were really fortunate that 2048 Ventures gave us our first check into the company. It was also really, really great timing because Nucleate was a great chance while we were still both in school to really vet this idea more. I think there's a little bit. Some people see it maybe as a little bit more risk when when you don't sort of have the maybe comfort of an academic institution or lab that you're spinning out from, and when you transition out, we were an idea. We didn't really have that comfort, but we did have the comfort of being in school still. And so it was a really great chance through Nucleate to kind of test the waters and really push different aspects of the company forward, not only for KiraGen, but through kind of Activator itself. So it was really perfect timing to get us through. And I'll wait for another question later to talk about how we actually ended up working in glioblastoma. It was also a nucleate motivated decision.
Okay. Okay. We'll look forward to that then. Thank you. And
All right,
Gleb,
well,
I'm looking forward to your story too.
Yeah, happy to share. So myself, my co-founder, Pierce Ogden, we were graduate students in George Church's lab, working on technology development of all kinds over the years. And toward the end, so I had just graduated, Pierce was about to graduate. We started having thoughts of what we can do with the kind of technology we're building. So we'd become very, very good at multiplexed protein measurement, protein design. And the thought was that these kind of approaches should be quite transformational in an applied setting. And in particular, we were very curious about how drug discovery was done, what are the limitations, and already starting to observe that there seemed to be certain ways that could be strictly done better if we brought some of the new technologies we were bringing forward. Fall of 2018, we were thinking more about, just playing with different technology ideas. And what really motivated us to join was actually Sufyan at the time was starting the program along with Marissa Pettit, and a few others. And he started coming to our bench saying, "Hey guys, I'm starting this program. I need you to apply. And I think you would be perfect for the program." And so we were kind of like, yeah, sure, but we don't have time to make decks or whatever. We just need to make the science work. So there's actually this period of a few weeks where Sufjan just kept coming to us. And again, it's kind of amazing to think at that time he was, Sufjan is begging us to apply to the program that almost no one was applying to. And fast forward today, it's a super competitive global scale program. But nonetheless, we joined the program, and we're in the first cohort of 2019. I can talk about, I think we'll get further into what was the impact of that, but just having the forcing function of going through each of the steps of creating your first deck, your first finance plan, your first operational plan, that became such an invaluable part of really the catalyst for us to get ourselves together and transform from postdocs into company founders.
Cool. Cool. I love that Suf pressed you guys to really do this. He saw value in you early. So I love that. Throughout your time in the Nucleate Activator program, there are, I guess, two ways that we could go about this next question, just so that we can hit all the sort of parts that we want to talk about today. You can choose to answer either what was the most valuable part of the program for you. We heard a little bit about that from Tere. Or were there moments while you were in the program that really challenged and changed how you thought about being a leader? So you can talk about the sort of transformational aspect or the primary value adds that you found from the program.
Yeah, I can start. Oh, no, go ahead. Go. Well, I think this is probably a good time now to talk about why we ended up in glioblastoma. So not only is the Activator program a good forcing function, but it's a safe place to make mistakes, and I think that's really important as you are trying to start a company, or really just understanding how what the process is to start a company. Is that you need to feel safe enough to make mistakes. And I think one rule that everyone on this panel and all entrepreneurs know is that not every pitch goes according to plan. And so, yeah, a lot of Ryan, my co-founder's PhD work, had been in non-small cell lung cancer, and so that's sort of where we were trying to pitch a lot of our story, just because that is the space that he was familiar with, and we knew that glioblastoma had made a lot of recent headwinds, or had made a lot of progress on the CAR T side very recently, but we hadn't built that into our script for a pitch. And so we actually, 1 week before demo day, or maybe 2 weeks, you get a practice pitch day. And that pitch failed miserably. Like, I could tell it was failing miserably. You can really read an audience. But it was actually afterwards, when we went to discuss and had sort of a networking session with the judges and different panelists, that they heard about how we were integrating glioblastoma into our story, or could. And they encouraged us at least to try one time where your story completely changes from what we had been doing around non-small cell lung cancer to glioblastoma, and see what happens. And so I made the decision to have that one time be on demo day. And so I stayed up until 2 a.m., redid all my slides. And the first time that anyone had heard our story around how it could apply to glioblastoma was on demo day. And it clearly resonated really well. We were really fortunate to win the top prize there that day. So Nucleate, for us, there were lots of value throughout the entire process. But I would say being able to fail safely allowed us to take the chance and give a story around GBM, which is now our lead program.
Lovely.
Gleb, do you want to go?
Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and hop in. So, my answer to the question, I can actually sort of answer both questions about both, what was the most valuable part of the program, as well as some of the learnings for us as founders and leaders. Put briefly, just getting out of the building is a very important thing to do, especially as a scientist or an engineer, when you're tinkering away at something and you don't really know what's going on outside. The Nucleate program helped us start creating materials and interfacing with people outside. So through mentors, advisors, we also started emailing folks at different and pharma companies, as well as at different actually pharma company, speaking to folks at pharma companies, scientists at different levels is incredibly helpful. And what that lets you do is it's similar to kind of how Aaron highlighted, where you get a little more exposure to see the bigger world and where the problems are. And then on the second half of that question, you really come to appreciate what you don't know. And that is both very, in one sense, it can be scary when you have a first conversation with an expert in a domain and you just hear concepts and terms that you haven't heard before, and you want to sort of walk the fine line between acknowledging that you don't know, but also engaging and understanding. But it's also quite motivating because you realize there's not an infinite number of new concepts. It's actually pretty quick to wrap your mind around what those concepts are. So whether it's how drug development is done, for example, it feels cryptic when you're outside of that world, but then you start to understand it and understand the principles for it. And you can quickly build your confidence in how it works, and also start to form your own opinions about things that you think are opportunities. And that really motivates you and really helps guide your own your own efforts in a way that's going to be highly differentiating and beneficial. So getting out of the building and being both kind of humbled but also motivated by the things you don't know, and reacting and learning.
Thank you.
So for us, I feel like DUB is and was at a very specific crossroads that is trying to establish itself outside of academia. And it's great that we've been so successful with grant funds, but in a way, it's debilitating because when investors are evaluating you, they want to see that you can kind of stand on your own as a company and not lean so heavily on the academic support. And what I mean by that is, number one, they're looking, has anyone else invested in you? Right. So grant funds are a signal, but where are the people who are really taking on the risk, right? So grants, you don't have an ROI with grants, and they're great for what they're used for. But the mindset of an investor is a little bit different. And so having our mentor who actually had a background at a VC, but was now working at a consulting company, gave us a way to kind of evaluate our company's next steps, as well as position those steps and talk about those steps in a way that an investor could buy in. And so the sole job of a CEO really is to look into the future and chart the path that the company is supposed to go. So I love Gleb's comment about you don't know what you don't know. Not knowing keeps me up at night. And so really just participating in any sort of program where you might have a couple of those futuristic steps kind of like mapped out for you or discussed about, then you can say, okay, well, my company operating in X modality and X therapeutic area, that's actually a target that we need to hit. And now the question is, how do you work backwards? So for us, we had kind of done a lot of these types of programs through our academic system. The Nucleate program allowed us to do and participate in this type of program at a global scale with, different types of participants, and the caliber of the people that they're bringing to the table for the summits is just different. And then we use the contributors to work backwards and fill in the gaps that we didn't know, right? Just like mapping out in more and fine detail those steps for executing properly. And so, again, I can't say enough good things about how Nucleate was able to support DUB Therapeutics. Even the sponsors, we took advantage of a lot of the sponsor promos that were brought to the table. We're a resourceful team though. So, I mean, I'm sure everyone is, but like we've taken advantage of literally everything that Nucleate has to offer. And I say that shamelessly.
I love that. I actually really want to dig a little deeper on that. You're resourceful, your team is resourceful, and you've told us a lot about the network within Nucleate that you've leaned on and really tried to leverage. Are there similar stories of taking advantage of Nucleate's network and broader resources, not just with the Activator, that any of you have that you'd like to share with the people watching today?
Yes. So I'll kick this off because this program actually bought us what we were looking for, which is presence in Boston. But what I didn't realize until I actually got involved in the program is that Mass Bio being connected and a supporter of Nucleate actually allows remote access and membership. And through Mass Bio and what they're into, such as the Tamir Institute, the other types of programming that they have that are free of charge, even attending JP Morgan, if you're a Mass Bio member, you have a table that is set up for you that you can book time. These types of things make communication with potential key stakeholders that much more simple and easy to organize, particularly when you're on the road. So it's truly the gift that keeps giving. And as Nucleate continues to grow, remember that it's not just like the Boston site or access for opportunities. This is a global program with chapters literally everywhere. And once you're in, you're kind of family. So figuring out how to tap into all of these different resources geographically should be like the problem that you now try to solve. It's a good problem to have, but it's an opportunity that we all should be taking advantage of.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't not answer this question by giving Exceeder a shout out. I think we can't stop giving our money to Exceeder, just because they're so helpful. When you are setting up your own lab space and you don't have $300,000 to pay for a piece of equipment and lab, being able to lease it at a pretty modest monthly rate is life changing for a startup. When you have workhorse pieces of equipment you need, and then when you become part of the sort of Exceeder customer family, not only do you get to benefit from that really affordable leasing, but I was also fortunate enough for John Chi to have me on his podcast, and I think the Nucleate's a big fan of distribution and panels like this today, but it is especially important to be able to have distribution broadly as a startup trying to stand out from the crowd today. So being able to get on those podcasts is definitely attributable to my time at Nucleate, and I can never not answer this question by giving John and the Exceeder team a shout.
I love that. I hope you're watching, John.
I was not asked to insert an ad, but I can just comment that networks. This is more kind of a general comment. Get out, you start talking to folks, folks in your network. You'll find that the world is very small. You meet a few people, and all of a sudden you can find connections to very senior folks in pharma, pretty much everyone, anyone on the investor side. Now, a really nice benefit of Nucleate is the extensive network of founder alumni. And founders are the best form of intro to investors or to even folks in pharma. So I think that's an incredible, probably one of the most valuable aspects of the network that you would get here, and especially more so today than for us when we were, the first group of 4 or 5 founders.
Super fair. Yeah. Cool. So for anyone watching, clearly once you're in, you have a much broader network than you might have realized, and it's something that sticks with you no matter where you go, in summary. I'm curious how your outlook about your roles or just the functions of your roles have really changed as you've gone from being bench scientists or students to operators and leaders in your companies. What things have you had to really learn and hone your skills on, or maybe unlearn?
Oh, that's a good one. I think, well, the first and foremost, it's the way that you talk to people. Like when you're talking to your mentor at the bench or your colleagues in the lab or your department, the jargon that is supported there is very different. So in a way, we do learn how to make talks that are generally palatable and that are easy to understand. But you take that to another level when you're talking to angels. You take that to a different level when you're talking to, investors who operate in your space, and the conversation nuances will change. So in some of those situations, you need to know, what can I say that's not going to throw people off? And where do I really need to pull things back? And it's going to be different for the majority of the groups that you speak with. So the same goes for your deck. So just understanding that my preparation isn't broad stroked, like I have to prepare for everyone that I'm going to be speaking with individually, was something that I had to learn, and then build time into my workflow for, which is very difficult when you're wearing so many hats. I think the other thing for me is it's been challenging, I think, in different ways for me, because my co-founder really was here first, right? In a lot of ways. And so I'm junior, but now leading the company, that's created, like, we work together, but at the end of the day, like, the truth is that I have to be even more on top of the diligence to understand where her perspective is, but also understand the perspective that DUB needs to have to be successful and take its next best step forward. And those two things don't always agree. So being able to just challenge, but work alongside other perspectives when you're the youngest person in the room among all of these people with decades of industry experience can be really challenging.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of my role now is being able to pull from my past. And so, our story is a little bit different because Ryan and I had worked in industry together, and so we had a great relationship before we went back to school and then came back for KiraGen. But the best part of my job is knowing that I can walk into lab and really have that type of conversation with all of our scientists at the bench. And even when we're talking about budgets, I do my best to be able to connect the dots of why I'm asking how much they need for the next month or the next quarter, and connect that to scientific milestones. And I think being able to see through that, having that sight line to know when I'm either pitching a story or being able to go into lab, connecting those dots and really bridging that gap. I think historically there'd been not as many people that could speak the same language of scientists, but also the business side. And so the more you have that capability, I think it goes hand in hand with kind of a successful and cohesive team. So we've been able to do a lot pretty quickly with a lean and efficient team, just by being able to speak to each other. So I think that's a favorite part of my role. So definitely don't take for granted your time at the bench, because it's really important for whenever you do maybe leave the bench and then have people or teams of your own to manage. So take that time and value it, because you'll be pulling from it for the rest of your career.
Great. Yeah, on my side, I really like the point of knowing how to talk to different audiences, that Tere brought up. That's very important. It's important to come up with good heuristics for that, as a, just having a goal for every meeting and knowing your top three things you want to get there is very powerful. A few other things that has been important, especially as we are now starting to scale more, is one is hiring really good people. I think hiring is a superpower that your company needs to have. And so figuring that out for yourself is very important. Having a good process and how to recognize what is good. And then it's also important, as related to the point of talking to different people and actually even talking to your team once you bring them on, the importance of highlighting the why to everything is very, very important. So if we're going to set up a hiring process the way it is, communicating why we do things that way, I think when we're setting goals and then looking to make sure that they're being accomplished, communicating the why behind the goal and the context is really important. And the most important thing you can do as a company founder is you can make very clear to people, what we're trying to do and why. And you've hired good people, a lot, the rest sort of happens in a way. So, and the similar, again, this analogous for when you talk to investors, when you talk to others, if you communicate why, that really helps to sort of tie everything together. And yeah, getting good at that and being dynamic at that is very important.
Awesome. Thank you all. So we have a few questions from the audience. We're going to ask a couple of those. The first one I want to ask is, what was the most challenging part of spinning out a company from academia? What was working with the TTO like, and what do you wish you knew or had access to?
Gleb, do you want to start?
Sure. I think it's among the challenges spinning out, there's definitely just a lot of things you don't really know. But you can actually go out and get that information. So, for example, specifically to the TTO, the technology licensing office or the equivalent at your university, one is just understanding what is the incentives and motivations driving them. This is very important generally for again, in the theme of learning how to talk to different parties on your journey. Understanding that their goal is to find a sort of win-win situation to get technologies out into the world, but also make sure that they're capturing a fair share of the value that they've helped create. I think that's really important. There's a really good resource, I believe, that Nucleate has published that has some really nice principles of how to do this. So I recommend anyone, whether you're in the Nucleate program or thinking about it, or whether you're even an alumni, going back and accessing that information is really, really valuable. Just getting as many anecdotes of things is very valuable. So these are floating around in resources like the one from Nucleate, and just talking to different people, find other founders, understand what was the nuances, explain your context to them and see how they react and how they can ask them to map that to closest thing that they experienced. And if you do that just a little bit, you can go 80-20 on your understanding quite quickly.
Yeah, so for us, I would say that, the SUNY system is making it incredibly easy to be successful, and that's an initiative that they have. So not all TTO offices are created equal, and it's important to understand as you're going through this journey, tapping into resources about what are standard agreements, what those look like, what do they include, especially as you're optioning to license the technology or obtaining the full license. You definitely want to have some legal counsel to support you with that effort. Counsel that is specific to your company and isn't associated with the university. That seems kind of common sense, but not everyone recognizes that there is a difference, and that the legal counsel provided for the university is really truly looking after the university interests, and you just want to just double check those maths. And so, I'm very happy with how we've been supported, but I also recognize that there's a specific initiative from the SUNY system, and not everyone is built that way, particularly in this current funding environment. A lot of budgets have decreased. So you just want to meet them, develop relationships just like you would any other stakeholder early, and start working with them early, because some of these things do take a long time, and that can be challenging for companies like really getting off the ground.
Yeah, thank you. And for Aaron, I know that it's not an academic spin out per se, but do you have any thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I think in general, maybe just concepts around getting off the ground. One, ask for help. I think it was said earlier, like, do not feel like you're the only one that needs to be you or your co-founder, or if it's just you talking and thinking about your startup. People, said earlier, but founders, other people want to help you succeed, and they're not going to steal your secrets, so to speak. I think George sort of mentioned this. Be transparent with those that you trust. And I know that this can be a controversial sort of take, but learn how to leverage AI and ChatGPT. I use ChatGPT as a brainstorming thought partner, assistant, to whatever you want to call it, constantly. And you don't have to say, oh, well, ChatGPT told me 5%. This is what I need to negotiate. But all those thoughts that you have in your head, see what the large language models tell you. If you have a question, because just they might come up with a different option that you didn't even know existed. And so I think what's really important, what Nucleate does a great job at, Pillar has a great database for also some of these resources. Know that there are not only rule books, but there are also other ways to do things that are not listed maybe in that guidebook. And so, be creative, know what you're being presented in front of you is just one way to do things, whether it's a spin out or doing what we did and actually starting something on your own. You can carve your path on your own. And just know the pros and cons of doing that. So leverage asking for help, whether it's a person, founder, or even your ChatGPT Claude thought partner.
Sweet. Thank you. All right, we just have a few minutes left. So I would like for us to end with this one last question around what advice would you give to someone considering applying to the Activator?
Do it yesterday. You have nothing to lose, literally, and everything to gain.
Yep, you don't make any shots that you don't take. So this is definitely a low risk. So you apply, and even if you don't have the intention to maybe spin out the company afterwards, it's such a great experience to get your brain working on how startups can operate.
Yeah, just echoing both of those pieces of advice. I think it's a great program. I think, just starting doing the thing is really important, and the Nucleate program gives you the scaffolding, the architecture to be able to do that. And it's, building a company is an incredibly iterative thing, and you need to start getting those first iterations in there. I think Aaron mentioned earlier there's nothing like giving a horrible pitch to really give you some nice feedback on yourself to go back and improve, and then just get it done. And sometimes it's one night of a sprint gets you a really nice pitch, a much better pitch the next day.
Okay, cool. That was way quicker than I thought it was going to be. So one more final question for y'all. How can participants get the most out of the program when they're in it?
Ooh. I guess just keeping your mind open, like it depends on your stage, right? So that's the truth of the matter. But let's say you're very, very, very early in the ideation stage. I would just say come open with ideas about how your technology could fit in the market, because really you just need to find out what's the perfect product market fit. Who are you providing the service to, and will they buy it? That's the most fundamental question that you really truly have. And everything else will kind of build on top of that. So if you're in a later stage, maybe your question is different, but really kind of refining that cornerstone of your foundation of what service or product am I putting on the market, and is there a need for it? Meaning, will people trade currency for it? That's a really, really important question to make sure that you have a yes to.
Yeah, be receptive to feedback. I think when you come in, if you're sort of the PhD that has worked on a certain project that you're trying to spin out or put into the program, know that you're going to get a lot of different sort of sources of feedback, whether it's a direction to go for your indication or how to go platform versus asset. You don't have to listen to their advice, but be really receptive and open to something that you might not have considered before. If you don't go in with a really open mind, you're definitely not going to get the best parts of Nucleate out of the program.
Right. And I would add that I think really treat it like you are starting or building a company. So it's not just an abstract academic program or a set of exercises. Just really bring the mindset to, how do I really bring this thing to life? Looking for product market fit. Like, how do I get the feedback to really update what I'm doing? And with your team and your co-founder, really act like true co-founders. Like, some folks will continue and with you, others will go off and do other things. But in that moment, if everyone both acts and treats each other like true equal co-founders, you will get a lot out of what you're trying to do, and really test the relationship and have an opportunity to confirm, is this the right team, or make adjustments, et cetera. So leverage the opportunity that you get with this program for that purpose.
I just want to say,
Awesome.
I'm so
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I know you're running out of time. Yes to Gleb, like that comment, what you're bringing into the program is what you're going to get out. So if you want to get out of the program, make sure you're bringing your A game. Nothing is going to be served to you through this. You'll have access to resources, but it truly is what you put into it.
Thank you. Thank you for that last note too. We are out of time, unfortunately, but I want to thank the three of you for spending some time here with us this morning. I feel like we hit a lot of topics that are really crucial for people interested in this program to understand and just to see where they could end up with successes like you three. It's been really fun chatting, and I think we're ready to hand it off to the next group.